Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every single episode, I feature a world-class expert on talent and recruiting so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. I am so pumped to speak with my guest today, Malvika Jethmalani. Now, let me tell you briefly about Malvika because her background is fantastic and her role is fantastic. And over the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk together about how your HR function, your talent function, can help serve as a change ambassador. And let's be honest, that's becoming an increasingly vital function because of the pace of change in your business. So Malvika heads up global human resources for Flavors Holdings. Now, I can guess you may not have heard of that business, but you've probably heard of their main products like Equal or Whole Earth. That's right. Flavors Holdings is one of the world's leading makers of tabletop sweeteners, amongst other products. They make sweet healthy. It's an indirect subsidiary of a phenomenally successful private equity firm, McAndrews and Forbes. And prior to this role, Malvika was in human resources at some other market leaders, Danaher, CareerBuilder, etc. She's also a fellow alum of the Kellogg School of Management. I am thrilled to welcome Malvika to the show. How are you, Malvika?
I'm great. How are you, Jeff?
I'm terrific. So nice to have you on. I'm thrilled that over the next 15, 20 minutes, we're going to talk about this topic of change ambassador. Let's start maybe at just a 50,000 foot view for 60 seconds. What have been some of the changes over the past couple of years as you joined the business that you and the leadership team have kind of been working through?
Sure. So the way I think about change is, it should be outcome driven. So we started with defining the business objectives. What are the key strategic pillars that we want to work toward? And what that helped us clarify is what are our talent strategies and outcomes that we want to drive? So reducing voluntary regrettable turnover, reducing succession planning, white space, et cetera. So we started working on, those outcomes and those improvements that we needed to drive, which guided the changes that we needed to make. So we were able to reduce our voluntary regrettable turnover, for example, from 11.5% when I joined to less than 5% now.
I love that term. Was that voluntary regrettable turnover?
Correct.
Can you define that? I've never heard that one before.
Sure. So those are the individuals in your organization who voluntarily leave your business and are deemed regrettable losses by the organization.
Got it. So these are the people that you kind of cry yourself to sleep when they give notice.
That's correct. Exactly.
And you've cut that in half.
Yes.
So what are some of the changes, just to focus on that for a minute, what are some of the changes that you've put in place that have enabled you to cut regrettable turnover in half?
Sure. So one of the first things that we did, Jeff, is Albert Manzoni, our CEO, and I kind of partnered to really make crystal clear our strategies for the business and what are the key priorities. So, people want to be part of a growing company, and that has been at the forefront of the strategy that we've been driving. So what that helped us determine is, okay, if we want to drive growth, we're a consumer products company, and so what that means is we need to invest in brand building. We need to invest in innovation. So what we did is we invested in building an innovation team, creating a marketing center of excellence. We brought in the right talent and the leadership team members to head up those teams. And from there, we helped implement a new performance management system. There was no performance management system in place when I started. And the way that we drove that is through a focus on growth and development. So we took performance management from kind of a tactical, process to evaluate people, which is more what the company wants, to a process and system that is focused on driving growth and development for the employees, which is what they're looking for.
So with that money, I mean, you rattled off a list of initiatives we could spend 5 hours on. With that many initiatives and that much change, setting up new functions, driving innovation, I happen to know that the business, has really improved its performance over the recent year or two from where it was. How have you managed change amongst employees? Because I have to imagine all that change can really rattle people if you're not proactive about addressing that change. So give us some ideas about how you've done that and the leadership team has done that through communication or other means.
Sure, absolutely. So communication is an area that was lacking as well. So as we started to create and develop these strategies, we started to communicate clearly, obviously starting with the top. With any change initiative, you want to ensure obviously that you have buy-in at the top, but a lot of HR, practitioners and leaders really underestimate or completely ignore the time that it takes for your executive team to process and digest that change. And so we took enough time to make sure that they were comfortable with it, that they understood the why, that they were equipped with the right talking points and the rationale so that they were able to go back and communicate to their teams around why we're making these changes, what does this mean for everyone, and what does the future of the business hold.
How long did that process take of driving alignment amongst the senior team? You mentioned that some of the team members were new at the top table. So how long did that process take?
Sure. So we've also, recruited a brand new leadership team in the last couple of years. So initially, when we started this process, it took a good 3 to 6 months to drive that alignment and to ensure that everyone at the top was comfortable with the direction that we were taking the business in. And with every new hire on the executive team, we've really taken the time and invested the effort to ensure that they're aligned and that they understand the future and that they understand the reasons as to why we're driving these changes. And it also comes down to making sure that we're looking for those traits, looking for adaptability when we're bringing people into the organization.
Got it. And I assume the inverse is true. If you're looking for adaptability, as you've driven this change, there must have been some folks along the way who proved that they weren't adaptable, weren't flexible. How did you begin to get your arms around that? Or did the leaders of the business and the functions begin to get their arms around that? What do you do with those folks?
Sure. So we've been very aware that the company that we had 2, 3, 4 years ago is not the company that we have today. It's a different company. We have different priorities and it's not for everyone. And so one, we made our leadership team aware of that. They're all very much aware of that. Second, we talked very openly, at least at the executive level, about, how do we approach these situations? Obviously, once you clarify your business priorities and the future of the business, you want to make sure that you're giving people the time to adapt to those changes, clarifying very clear objectives and deliverables for them. When they consistently are not meeting those expectations or are aligned, even after continued, obviously, coaching and feedback, then you have a tough decision to make. But we also found that in a lot of cases, people kind of self-select out.
Right. They say this was the place for me, and now not so much.
Yes. And the key is, in either way, whether it's them initiating that conversation or the company, is to treat those individuals, with respect and ensure that you're still acknowledging and recognizing their years of contribution to the company.
So this is the $1 million question that I'm sure a lot of listeners wrestle with. Let's presume they don't opt out. They clearly don't have the same DNA that's needed for success in the new situation. How long do you wait? How long do you give them? Of course, like you said, being mindful and respectful and all those things, but do you know after a week, a month, a quarter, a year, how long is long enough?
In my experience, what I've seen, Jeff, is a minimum of 3 to 6 months, because any time frame less than 90 days is too early to really even have a meaningful discussion about how are you doing on your objectives, what's getting in the way, how can I, as your leader, help take some of those obstacles out of the way. So having a time frame of 3 to 6 months, in my experience, seems fair. It drives candid and transparent conversations, two-way conversations between the manager and the employee. And I think that's important in order for the employee to feel that they received a fair shot and a fair chance.
Got it. We've talked about change with regard to the DNA and the culture. let's talk about change in the business category. I know that a ton of stuff is happening in the health food category. I'm sure it's kind of oozing into sweeteners as well. What has the business done with regard to those changes? And again, how do you be that ambassador for change internally?
Sure. So, you're seeing a lot of trends. Obviously, there's macro trends. You have an obesity epidemic. You have diabetes and heart disease that are becoming more and more problematic, especially in developing nations. And we see our role in the world as solving those problems. So the first step is, to educate everyone in your organization about what is the role that you play in the world. And we started with that. You mentioned that our vision is we make sweet healthy, and we started by educating our employees around that and what that means for everyone, and helping them really make meaning. One of the key roles that HR leaders and executive leaders play in the business is being those kind of meaning-making people, helping the employees connect their work to the broader vision of the organization. Yep. So we started there. And second, as you look at, the trends in terms of how consumer preferences are shifting, we read labels more than ever. We're very conscious about what we're putting in our bodies. And that has really helped guide our innovation pipeline. So we're focused on, non-GMO, clean label ingredients and products. And that's helping us make sure that our product development and innovation pipeline is shifting with consumer preferences as well.
Have those new products and new innovations been wholly exciting to the organization, or have there been people that have been nervous about even new products, new brands? In other words, is that something that just unifies everyone and they get excited about the new launch of Whole Earth or whatever brand or product it might be, or are there people that even resist that kind of change?
We did have people initially about 2.5 years ago that kind of resisted some of those changes, and rightfully so, because they may or may not have been part of those discussions in the past, or they may have brought ideas to the table that were not necessarily entertained. But we're in a place now where our organization is completely aligned, and people are very energized and excited by the innovation that we're driving. And that's because they see, one, that we are ensuring that our innovation pipeline is consistent with what consumers want, and two, because we've made a very conscious investment in insights and research, and ensuring that we're investing in those areas only, and that all of our efforts are guided by insights.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit to international. We're being a global player, because while it's not a company, Flavors Holdings, that everyone has heard of, they've certainly heard of the labels and the products that you guys make, and they're sold in so many countries. How many countries is it these days?
90 countries.
Your products are sold in 90 countries.
Yes.
It's a lot of countries. So how do you manage change? How do you, as the head of talent globally, how do you serve as the change ambassador from Chicago across 90 countries?
So one, it really helped that I had a global background prior to joining the organization. So in my previous organization, I supported 50 countries. So that helped. What's really important to understand, obviously, is how do your global strategies adapt, and how are they translated locally? What are consumer preferences locally? What are employee preferences in different countries? Different employees value different things. And really taking the time to understand the business unit level strategy is really important for anyone in a position similar to mine. So when I started in the organization, I spent time with each business unit outside, including the US and also outside of the US, to do exactly that. I traveled, to our key locations. I traveled to our manufacturing plants, sat in on team meetings, sat in on business unit strategy and planning meetings. And that really helped me understand, and it helped me build credibility with the local leaders and the employees. And of course, my past experience helped with that as well.
It sounds like that's far more than how a lot of people, including maybe some listeners, think about the HR function, right? You're thinking much more like a CEO and a business person than quote unquote just HR.
I think that's becoming even more and more important now. CEOs are looking for their head of talent or their head of people operations to really act as what role the CFO plays. You're a thought leader. You're someone that he or she will bounce ideas off of. You need to be able to push back and challenge. And in order to do that in a meaningful way, you really need to understand what's going on in the business and what does the organization really do. The former head of talent for Netflix, Patty McCord, talks about, well, if someone is writing code, do you understand what that means? Have you sat next to an engineer, desk side, and shadowed them for a day? Because that's when the real meaningful feedback and pushback comes in.
Right. So there's got to be some things that you wish you did differently. Let's go back in time, rewind the clock. You said this evolution or turnaround has been a couple years in the making. If you could go back in time and do some things differently that would have accelerated the change or made it less painful, what do you wish you had done?
I think having the harder conversations earlier on is always more important. I can think of a couple of instances where I should have done that in different parts of the organization or pushed different leaders in the organization to do that. Because the faster that you identify, a gap between where the organization is going and where employees see their career going, the better it is for both parties.
So no matter how fast you think you're moving, in hindsight, you're probably not moving fast enough.
Absolutely. And that's a struggle that I hear from, not only people operations leaders, but CEOs, presidents, almost everyone I speak with is you have to move fast.
Yeah, I think I find the same with my clients. They worry rightfully about the pace of change and how much change their organization can absorb. And I tell them, you'd be surprised how much change people can absorb as long as you're communicating not just what the change is, but the rationale behind it. They will pull together much faster than you ever might think. And if they don't, then like you said earlier, Malvika, they may not be with the business long term. And those are the folks that you don't want to be focused on. You want to focus on the ones that are going to be with the business long term. Absolutely. You got it. Great. This has been fantastic, Malvika. How can people learn more about Flavors Holdings and Marisant and Equal and Whole Earth and all your brands? Sure. So our website, marisant.com, as well as magnasweet.com are the best ways to reach us. And of course, you can always contact me at malvika.jethmalani@marisant.com. I'm always happy to connect. Fantastic. I give you a ton of credit for helping lead the business through, which sounds like it's been a pretty transformative time in a category that's evolving pretty rapidly too. So it's kind of a double whammy, right? Changing the business and changing the category. So congratulations. Thank you very much.